Okay, I think we're ready to start now that we've got our glamour shot out of the way. Thanks for waiting, guys. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Amanda Morris. I'm a disability reporter for the Washington Post, and we're here to talk about why accessibility matters and why captions can be really good for both consumers and for brands and content creators. So I'd like to just first start by introducing Fernando, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Rev. And could you just give a brief description of your elevator pitch on who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm Fernando. I'm originally from Mexico. I've been in the US for 14 years, and I work for Rev, a speech-to-text technology company based in Austin. I've been in the technology space for 14 years, and before then, I worked for companies like J&J, Red Bull, and Nestle in consumer packaged goods.
Thank you. And then next, Zohar, the Senior Vice President of Product for Vimeo.
Hello, I'm Zohar. I'm SVP of Product at Vimeo. For those of you who don't know, Vimeo is one of the largest video platforms in the world. Today, about a fifth of the world's online video traffic is viewed through Vimeo. So it's a big platform. Prior to Vimeo, I was a founder and CEO of a company called Wibbits, which was an automated video creation software company based on AI.
And then finally, we've got Rachel, who is a postdoc fellow at Harvard University.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Kolb. This is my sign name. I am here to talk about different deaf perspectives on the use of captioning technology. I grew up as a deaf individual. I've used captions for everything in my life, and I still use them daily. I'm also a writer myself, so I'll talk a lot about the deaf view on things in the modern world today. Excited to talk with you all.
We're also really excited to have all of you here. And I should have mentioned earlier, I'm also a hard of hearing individual, and both my parents are deaf. So that's part of the reason I was really excited about this panel. And for me, captions have really been a godsend. I love them. I use them all the time. But as you guys all know, that with the explosion of captions, we've also seen a lot of backlash from people who say that they're annoying or get in the way of the content. And we've seen others who don't want to add captions, maybe because of the expense, the cost, or how much time it will take to build that feature in. So with this in mind, I actually wanted to ask you all just to first start about what impact adding captions can have when brands and content creators do this and how it brings in new audiences.
I can get started. So I think there's two sides of the coin. So one side is compliance and the other side is user engagement. So from a user engagement standpoint, when you add captions, it is proven that it increases 80% the user engagement and the time that the user spends watching video. So from a content creator, storyteller standpoint, that is crucial for delivering the message, right? And when it comes to captions and the experience itself, I think that every word really matters. So if you get the message right and you're able to convey the message through captions for those people who are either watching the video with the sound off, which is 82% of the video consumption online happens with the sound off, or someone who is hearing impaired and wants to understand what is being said on the video, that is crucial, right? So accuracy and getting every single word right really, really, really matters. So that's one side of the coin on the engagement side. And then on the compliance side is really important because since 1990 with NDA, ADA was a thing, it became a thing, then companies started to pay more attention to it. So just as a fun fact, in 2023, over 2,300 lawsuits happened in the US related to the American Disability Act. So there's a compliance side of thing, and then there's the engagement and the reach side of thing.
I'm what's part of the post-ADA generation. So yeah, the ADA was passed in 1990, and I luckily have grown up expecting accessibility and not just requesting it. So did you have anything that you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, I think that if you think about it today, 1 in 20 U.S. adults have some sort of difficulty hearing. So it just goes to show the magnitude of the impact that captioning videos can have on viewers. And I think, to Fernando's point, the way people consume videos these days a big part to how social media platforms kind of change the way we consume content. Most of those videos are watched with sound off. And a recent study actually showed that 70% of overall Gen Z and millennials actually prefer to watch videos with subtitles. So I think it's a profound shift in how we consume content, and I think as a result, content creators, brands, marketers, creators need to adapt to how they create content as well.
I am one of those people that watches them with the sound off all the time. So Rachel, I actually wanted to dig a little deeper on that impact question. What impact does it have on you when you see content creators or you see brands that do use like captions? And, you know, how have you seen that impact, positive or negative, on other people that you know who are deaf or hard of hearing?
Sure. So I will say when I watch videos that are captioned, someone put in the effort to create those captions, I feel invited, I feel welcomed, because I can't watch videos without captions, period, sound or no sound. So it's not about figuring out how to do that myself, I just simply can't access that content. And it's not about aesthetics or making sure the captions look aesthetically pleasing. The point is about understanding and access to the content. And when I see content creators or companies that have set that precedent and added captions to their content, I think that access is there for me and my community. And I'm happy that that's been more and more common, even though we still have a lot of work left to do.
Yeah, it's definitely still not perfect. And I know for me and my parents, when we see that somebody automatically does captions, we're way more likely to just keep using that product. And why would we use a product we can't access? But anyway, I actually wanted to ask you the next question, which is, we know that captions can be really good for accessibility, but what else can captions be used for? What other applications can they have? And what sort of trends have you seen throughout the industry with that?
So as I was mentioning, engagement goes a long way with captions. So just to provide an example, I love the TV show Peaky Blinders. I don't know if anyone has seen it here. I can't follow any word that is being said on that show without the captions or subtitles. It's just impossible. The accent is so thick that I love the content, but I can't engage with it unless I understand what is being said. So that's how captions help a ton, right? So beyond accessibility is about capturing the user attention, understanding the context, and that's to my previous point about every word matters, is if you get a part of the dialogue on a movie or a video wrong with a word, then all of the context gets lost, right? So making sure that it is accurate and making sure that people are following the thread and making sure people are understanding what the context of the things are being said, it goes a long way for keeping the people's attention. And then we know that in this world, we're all fighting for people's attention, right? In the advertising space, in the brand space, in the content development space, we're all fighting for people's attention. So we need to find different ways to capture that and making sure that our message gets conveyed accurately.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think captioning is essentially transcribing the audio in many ways. So there's so much you can do with the transcription of a video to create entirely new experiences, whether it's on the consumption side or on the creation side. And I can give some examples. When it comes to the consumption side, you can localize content in a much easier way, especially today with all the emerging AI technologies that we're seeing, to not just create captions in multiple languages and accurate captions that actually capture the essence of the story, but also to create audio in different languages. Another example is if you think about video as a form of media, as opposed to a text document or PDFs or books, it's much harder to find content that's buried within those videos. And once you have videos transcribed, it's much easier to mine that information, to find that information, and to offer new types of tools for users to be able to discover that content. And really to find a moment in time inside a video that they're searching for, looking for. that holds that piece of data. And on the creation side, we're seeing really exciting new things because when you transcribe a video, now you have the full transcription, everything that was said in the video, and you can actually edit the video from the spoken word, from the text, from the transcript. And it's something that we actually launched at Vimeo this past summer, that once you have a video that contains speech, you can then edit that video using the transcript. So essentially, you're editing a video exactly like you would edit a Word document, which essentially enables anybody in the world to be able to edit video almost like a professional.
And way faster, I'm assuming. Yeah, because like I used to do video reporting and it was like such a nightmare to be like, pause the video exactly after they say this word and oh no, don't catch the beginning of the next word. And like that just seems like it would make my job a lot easier.
Especially for someone like me that says a lot of ums and ahs when I speak. We have a magic button, just with the click of a button removes everything, all the ums and ahs and awkward silent moments from the video. So it's a huge time saver, and it's all it's a byproduct of having transcription and captioning.
Yeah, I was also going to say to your point earlier, I'm a really big fan of Dairy Girls. And for anybody who doesn't know, all of the actors in Dairy Girl have a very thick Northern Irish accent. And it's pretty impossible to understand, I think, even if you are fully hearing without those captions. So I totally got your earlier point too. Zohar, I actually wanted to ask also, how did adding captions change your revenue and engagement at Vimeo?
Changes a lot. I think it's one of our top requested features and add-ons today. And it's not just for video on demand, so video that you upload onto Vimeo and kind of gets transcribed asynchronously. It's for live videos as well. So we offer live streaming, live event products at Vimeo, and one of the top requested features for that is live transcriptions as the event is happening. And I think that has been one of our major drivers, especially when it comes to kind of larger enterprise deals.
Okay. Yeah, I hope by now everybody's maybe getting the message that captions could be a really good idea. But as I mentioned earlier, there have been some backlash, right? And so I know just personally, like I've heard lots of people complaining about captions or complaining that they get in the way. And I also think that you get conflicting demands from different consumers, even about the captions themselves. Where should they be placed on the screen? How big they should be? How much they want captioned, things like that. And so another question I have is about how do you guys balance conflicting consumer demands or desires with like your efforts to do captioning, and like how do you decide how to move forward when one group wants something and another group wants something else?
So I think again, it's kind of divided into two main buckets. It's on the creator side and on the viewer side. So I think in a way, captions has become part of the creative or aesthetics of videos. Think about videos on TikTok today. They have these stylized captions that, there's a million styles that also emphasize certain words as the person is speaking. That's part of the creative of the video. Like that video wouldn't be that video if it didn't have the captions. So we try to offer all the creative tools for creators to be able to create videos that contain those types of captions. But on the viewer side, you also have we have the Vimeo player, one of the most popular players in the world. We leave it up to the viewer if they want captions on, if they want them off, what style. Again, we offer the creator the ability to upload different types of captions to the same video, so the user can decide which ones they want to watch, and also the style, like you said, the size, the color, the location, and so forth.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to add. I couldn't agree more. So giving the user the option, I think, is the best path to follow, right? Because otherwise you can't serve everybody with the same solution. So we've seen, for example, in sports, people don't really love captions because they get in the way of the action. And you don't necessarily are interested into what people are saying, the commenters. But however, on movies or documentaries or short videos on TikTok or many different platforms, people like to see those captions because they engage with the content even further. So providing them the option to place the captions on the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen, on the side, making them bigger, smaller, etc. It's very interesting. Now, from a technology standpoint, what do you cover within the caption? What do you capture and then display on screen? It's very interesting, like name tags, and then what is happening beyond what is being said. Like a door is being slammed on the back, or like heavy steps are happening in the rooms. Like you need to capture all that context. If you think about a suspense movie or a horror movie, that's what makes the movie more horrific, right? So you need to capture all those different details to be able to provide more context to the viewer, and they can engage more with the content.
I am always saying that because like sometimes my friends will watch like scary movies with me. I love scary movies, and it'll be like suspenseful music. And my friends are like, "Oh, that's so funny. Why would you have that?" And I'm like, "Okay, but you can hear that something's about to happen. Imagine if you can't hear that music and all of a sudden the killer just jumps out and you weren't even, I mean, you guys get a little bit of a heads up, right? It's like, that's important." So anyway, what you were saying about sports is also interesting because my dad loves baseball and hockey, and he grew up in the 60s when there were like no captions on TV. So that's basically all he watched. And now he's like a huge fan of documentaries, and he didn't even know when he was younger because he just really didn't get a chance to watch them. So it is interesting what you were saying. Like, I think that's like probably why my dad loves sports so much, because he didn't need the captions as much. So anyway, Rachel, I want to go back to you actually and talk about, even though my dad was fine not having captions when he watched his sports games, he probably would have liked them for basically everything else. Tell us a little bit more about how it feels when you come across something that's not captioned, especially in this day and age when it's definitely an option. And how is that like cause perhaps challenges for you? Do you have any examples of times where something wasn't accessible and it created an issue for you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and just yesterday I was flying here for this panel, and I was thinking about what I was going to talk about and what points I wanted to make about captioning. And as I was sitting on my flight, it was an early morning flight, I thought, might as well watch a movie. So, flights usually have screens on the back of the seats in front of you. So often I've noticed that films on flights or planes have certain options for captioning. Some of them do, some of them don't. And for some reason, this flight seemed to have no options at all for captioning. And that was a surprise. I looked through filters and I couldn't select an option to caption my movies. I looked through several different movie options, and captioning just wasn't an option. So that meant none of the films had captions, and it meant I was tired. I was tired of wasting my energy, clicking through, searching, trying to find which one video might have captioning. And maybe that film isn't something I even want to watch. So that's a really frustrating feeling. And it was kind of ironic flying here for this panel where we're talking about the importance of captions and accessibility. And I didn't have that on my flight. So it was another emphasis. It's something I see daily in my life. I remember growing up, I used to get really angry, and I would write letters and I would write emails because this is just such a common issue. And probably when I was 16 or 17, I flew somewhere and that issue came up again, no captions on movies, and I wrote an email to that airline and I complained, and that was probably 20 years ago. And now I'm still facing the same deal 20 years later and addressing that same problem. So I don't become that emotional anymore at this point in my life. I just kind of think, this is frustrating. It's happening again. So I read my book instead of watching something, but it's nice to have options if I want them, and just to have the same access as other hearing folks have on the plane. So I can sit back and enjoy a movie on my flight if I want to. And it feels like I'm shut out. That's really how it feels to me. I don't have an option to watch it if I want to. I can try to watch something without captioning and catch what I can, but I just don't even do that. So I decide not to watch those movies, and it takes a toll over time, and it has an impact on deaf and hard of hearing people.
Yeah, and I think even when there are captions, it's never the newest movies when you're on a flight. I don't know if you guys have ever checked, but it's always like, oh, all these new movies that just came out, and those are the ones that don't have the captions. And it's like my fiance is totally hearing, and he's sitting there and he's watching like the newest Spider-Man or whatever it is, and I'm like, great, that looks great for you, but not for me. Yeah, and especially on a plane, it's loud anyway. Like people probably need those captions. This actually, I think, another thing I wanted to talk about today, how many of you guys have heard the word disability dongle before? I'm guessing not many. I don't even see any hands raised, so probably not. It's a term coined by Liz Jackson, and we actually just had a discussion about it earlier today. It's a term used to describe an elegant and well-intended solution to a problem that disabled people never knew they had. And this often comes about when somebody who doesn't have a disability, maybe who is hearing, is like, oh, you know what would be really great and what deaf people would really love, and you know, maybe it's the sign language gloves or whatever. And they come up with some device, but then disabled people themselves don't actually use it because they didn't actually want it. So a great example is wheelchair that can climb stairs. Sounds great. But if you talk to somebody who has a wheelchair, they will tell you they would rather have a ramp, okay? Because a wheelchair that can climb stairs is probably expensive. You probably can't take it out in the rain or the snow, and it's probably not going to work half the times. And a ramp is much more reliable, cheaper, and it's already an easy solution. It also helps people who are pushing a stroller, carrying a lot of bags, whatever it is. It's useful for everybody. So again, that term is called disability dongle. And with that in mind, Rachel, I wanted to actually ask you about what sort of misconceptions do people have about what accessibility should look like and what actually is useful for people who are deaf or hard of hearing or otherwise disabled?
So this is always important to say that nothing about us without us is a disability slogan. I hope that's not the first time you're hearing that. It's something that is said over and over again in disability rights movements. And it's always important to emphasize that the design of new products or services or ideas should always include disabled, deaf, hard of hearing folks, and listening to that community in terms of what their needs are. I know a lot of the deaf community, the hearing perspective on language access it's a classic example of the sign language gloves that example that you gave, this misconception about access to language, and captioning could create access to all deaf people in all situations isn't actually accurate. So captioning can be used as a tool. It's something I use every day, but it's not used for everything. So right now I'm signing and I'm utilizing ASL and ASL interpreters, and that's an important part of my life as well. So part of creating these new approaches of engaging with these communities is thinking about flexibility. You know, one person may switch across different modes of communication and different ways of navigating the world. And when I think about the disability dongle concept, I think about the concept of one size fits all or a universal solution, and that just doesn't exist for these populations.
Yeah, actually, can you dig a little deeper on like why some people might prefer captions or why some people prefer ASL or sign language in other cases, and like maybe what situations are best for what?
Sure. So a lot of hearing people don't realize that ASL is a bona fide language in its own right. It's not the same as English. And for many deaf and hard of hearing people, English is not their first language. So this means reading in English is like reading in your second language as a hearing person. And you may not be comfortable doing that. And you may prefer straight access. So straight access into ASL is the option we have. So also having additional options that aren't just written or reading English, and having language preferences based on each individual and different environments have different considerations. So I prefer sign language when I'm interacting with certain people. I can see expressions and intonation, and I can see mood and personality through ASL, but I can't access that through captioning at all times. And sometimes captioning creates more work for me to do, but that's just my preference, and everybody's different.
It's a lot harder to use emotion when you're using caption. That's another shortcoming of it, I think. And it's interesting because even like I said, both my parents are deaf, and my mom in particular went to deaf school her life. She really uses ASL most of the time. And for her, she doesn't understand all words in English, even though she's what you would consider fluent in English, but she doesn't know as many words in English as she does in ASL, because ASL is her primary language. So now we know what a disability dongle is, but how do you avoid one? Fernando, maybe you can start with, how did you guys do market research or work with people to figure out how to make a product that was actually going to be useful and accessible for everybody?
So for us in particular, it comes down to understanding what is being said and making sure that we capture the idea, the context, and then we display it the right way, right? So as a speech-to-text technology company, it is about volume of data. So for us, context is very important. If you, just to provide an example, if you focus on transcribing or understanding conversations that happen during a meeting, right? So you capture certain context that is being said. But if you expand beyond the business type of environment and you move into the legal side of things, then you capture conversations that happen during a deposition or a court ruling or whatever, and then you capture also casual conversations that happen during a phone conversation. Then you mix it all together, then you understand, as a technology, you understand different contexts when things are being said, and you're able to create an LLM that is unbiased, right? So, or less biased than others, because you have context of what's being said in what situations, who said what and when. So the word courage could be used in many different ways, in many different contexts, and have different meanings. So you want to make sure that you get it right, and for that, context matters a lot. So we focus on, we have a huge team of researchers and linguistics who understand context, understand how words are used under what situations, and try to create the best algorithm possible to get it right and be able to help communicators say what they want to say in an accurate manner.
Is there any other advice you would give in terms of lessons learned or anything like that?
In terms of lessons, I mean, of course, AI is not perfect, and that's why we're not only an AI company, we also have humans in the loop, that's what we call it. So we have an AI pass, and then humans who perfect or tweak what the AI did in the first pass to make sure that the message is respected and it's actually captured the right way and communicated the right way to the user as well.
So it's like AI gets you maybe 70, 80% of the way there. Yeah, and then the humans are there to really make it perfect.
Exactly.
That's a great approach, yeah. Zohar, do you have anything you want to add about, how you guys create products that are actually usable, actually accessible, and actually what people want, or any other advice you have?
Yeah, I mean, we also have a team of researchers that provide us with insights. Video is an online standard, so we adhere to all the accessibility standards when it comes to watching videos. Some I mentioned before, like support for subtitles, for transcriptions, for multi-audio tracks, automatic transcribing of videos, but also things like focus modes in the player to make it clear for people who rely on navigating a screen through their keyboard to show them on the player, what is being selected right now. Support for screen readers that also kind of tell the user through audio, what their focus is on right now, whether it's the play button, the pause button, the seek button, and so forth. We definitely do a lot around that. And I think for all companies, including ourselves, spending more time with the people that we're building these products for and these features for, that is what's going to help us the most create the best solutions.
Yeah, I think, Rachel, you said it earlier, nothing about us without us. Do you have anything else you want to add in terms of advice that you would give companies or content creators on making a product actually usable, accessible, what people want?
Really, I think this advice always comes up, but it's worth repeating. Don't make it an afterthought. It should be something that's incorporated in the beginning. When you have the inception of the concept or ideation phase, talk with people at that time, bring them into your team, partner, collaborate with people from those communities. So it's not just an add-on after the fact. And just emphasizing the expertise that deaf individuals have and incorporating them in your teams.
That's great advice, yeah. Anybody else want to add anything else, or?
I was going to say, we've been focusing on content creators and the consumption of content. However, if you think about what goes behind the scenes of large productions, right? So movies and TV shows, et cetera, what are the options that the video production distribution companies have to leverage captions to engage audiences, right? So if you go into the what happens today or a few years ago, it's about you have a script, you have the production, you shoot the movie or the TV show, and then you have to go and transcribe the script and everything that is being said into multiple languages, and then you have to convert it into digital format, and then you have to go and embed it into the film, right? So today, with the growth of fast channels and streaming platforms, different requirements, you have to follow different requirements to be able to show or display or distribute your film across different channels. So it has become more difficult for content distributors to meet those standards, to align their content into what is required on each of the different platforms to be able to meet the standards and then have the show available for people to watch it. So that's where technology also takes a huge component, or is a big part of it, because you're able to adapt one single transcript into multiple languages, into different formats, into different requirements to meet them all.
And I also think, just to add on that, I think one of the reasons I think that there was a lack of more accessible features is, the time and resources and money that that it required. And I think we're at the dawn of a new era. Let's say 90% of this conference is around AI. And I think this is definitely going to help in that aspect as well, by reducing costs, reducing the amount of effort that it takes to make more content, more types of content accessible to more people.
Yeah, AI is like that big buzzword. Switching gears a little bit here, we talked earlier about, captions can be in different colors, different locations on the screens. And I think we're talking a little bit about the aesthetics of captions, right? And it's interesting because my mom she's deaf, but then she also wears glasses. So she likes her captions really big. And I wanted to ask about that is how can we think about captions as part of the creative process? How can we think about it earlier in the creative process? And how do we make sure that our captions are interesting without being annoying?
Again, I think it's become an element of the storytelling captions. Like I said before, the style, the design, how they pop on the screen, how they transition between each other. Sometimes they emphasize certain words in big, bold fonts. I think it's definitely part of the storytelling aspect of creating content these days. We try to, keep all the creative possibilities open for creators to do, to achieve what they're trying to achieve. And again, it used to be very complicated to do. If you wanted to design captions in the past, it required a ton of work. You had to manually, I don't know, for people in the audience who have edited videos through traditional editing platforms like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, creating stylized captions for a 1 minute long video could literally take hours to do. And now I can do it, in a couple of seconds on, an iPhone app. TikTok is a great example. So I definitely think that it's part of the message that you're conveying to viewers.
when I was in college, I used Adobe Premiere Pro, and I added captions to all my videos, and I was up many nights crying because I was like, oh my God, this is taking so long, and it's due tomorrow because I'm a procrastinator. But it's interesting like how much easier it's getting, because when I first started in journalism, I had some bosses that I would ask, hey, can we put captions on our videos for this news site? And they'd be like, no, we're not going to do that. And maybe now the answer would be different, because more and more news companies are also starting to use captions. Yeah.
And I think it's also another kind of form to differentiate between content. You know, if you have, you know, if you're scrolling through your social media feed and you see, you know, video after video that they all have the same standard captions that generally achieve the same thing in terms of the actual, you know, content and words. But if you're scrolling and you actually see the content is different, the style, the character, the brand can be portrayed through or conveyed through the captions as well. It's like an actual part of the it's a creative element, I would say.
Yeah, I think this also, you mentioned social media. To me, social media was when I really started noticing a lot of captions. Like I said, it feels like there's been an explosion lately. Rachel, when did you start noticing this shift to seeing more captions, and why do you think it happened?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier, and you're right, I did notice quite a shift, and I was thinking, when exactly did that happen? And I started to notice that it really took off more so during COVID. And I think it's because we were all stuck at home, we were engaging with our phones, we were scrolling, and that's when the culture became a bit more prominent with captioning. But I think technology also was good enough at that point to automate caption. There was AI voice recognition, and it wasn't perfect, but I've noticed at this point, it's good enough to provide much better captions than what we were seeing previously. And that change happened around the same time as COVID. So I think it was about 2020 is when I could really start to rely on AI captions, while at the same time seeing just more prevalent use of captions across social media. And we were talking about this before. One of you mentioned that Instagram added captioning to Reels in 2022. Is that right? So really only about 2 or 3 years ago. And now it's disseminated just about everywhere. So I feel like I can watch more videos, more content, and I can engage more. But I've also noticed that some of my hearing friends want to share things with me because they're sharing their lives with me, and now it's more accessible. They feel like they can watch videos and I can watch the same thing, and so they send it over to me, so I have access in that way as well, and it feels like it's something we can bond over, and it allows us to connect our interests, and it's mutually beneficial for friendships as well. And that's another cool perspective about adding captions to your content. It's not just for me, but it also helps build communities and build connections between the hearing world and the deaf world.
That is so interesting, because I feel like growing up, there was always this concept of like the deaf world and the hearing world, and they were very siloed and very separated. And I feel like part of that was also just being able to share things with each other, right? Like those little memes and those videos and those little pop culture moments, which is just a really interesting point. Do you guys have any thoughts on when this shift started happening and why?
I think it is in line with the growth of short form videos. So with born of TikTok and the adoption in the US and other countries, and then the shift in the consumer mind from long form videos to short form videos, that's when it happened. So Instagram or Facebook felt the pressure and had to match the standards of having captions available in their products, and now YouTube with shorts, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just the shift in the user behavior. So you have less time to capture the user attention, and you have less time to say more. So the more elements you can add to your message to make sure that people understand or gets it crisp, because you have 2 seconds to capture someone's attention. So the more elements you can add to a video, the better, right? To Zohar's point, if you do it very creatively and then you have like a very nice cover page and then when you scroll through the feed, then you see something popping up. It may be, I mean, the probabilities of you sticking on that video, sticking around watching that video are higher than if it's a flat video with a flat photo that has no captions on it, right? So what's funny is that today, an average internet user spends 2 hours watching video per day, but a Gen Z user spends 4 hours per day watching video.
That's wild.
That is crazy, yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, now I'm trying to think about how many hours I spend watching videos.
I think that what I mentioned before that previously I ran a company called Wibbits, and what we offered, or one of the first primary users were publishers that were trying to create more video content automatically at scale at low cost. And if you go back to kind of 2015-ish, I think that's when I started seeing more of the caption style videos, and the main driver for that, surprisingly, was money, because ads within videos generate the most money for publishers and for social media platforms, and during around that time when video was becoming more prevalent and easier to create, the social media platforms changed their algorithms to prioritize video content first. Then they changed the way that the feed works, that it autoplayed the videos. But we were playing with audio, and people were shutting it off right when the video was starting to play because everybody was watching it at work or something or in a meeting, and they had to shut it off. So they came up with autoplay on mute. And then, unless you have captions, there's basically no way that the user is going to stay and watch the remainder of that video. And that's where we really started seeing more and more demand for captioned videos, for text-on-screen videos, and kind of to where it is today with like a whole new type of short-form video style.
Yeah, who wants to watch a video on the subway and have it all of a sudden blare out whatever it is you're watching to everybody? It's interesting because it's like video autoplayed with sound to try to capture your attention, but it was almost the wrong type of trying to capture your attention when you're watching advertisements and it's like louder than your actual show and you're like bothered by it. But captions, like you were saying, actually grab somebody's attention in a good way. So it's like you don't want the sound, you actually just want the captions. You're actually going to get more attention that way. I will just say I'm also going to allow everybody here to ask some questions. We're going to do our final question, and then afterwards, please stick around for another 10, 15 minutes, ask some questions, and if we don't get to you guys, you can always talk to us in the hallway. We're happy to chat more about all of this. So we were talking about, this shift in terms of when we started having more and more captions, and I think part of it is also, like you mentioned AI earlier and having better technology. And I wanted to ask about this. It feels like technology is a lot like science. It's always a work in progress. So with this in mind, I know it's not perfect yet. You even mentioned that earlier, Rachel, like we're not 100% of the way there. What do you think is next in terms of technology, innovation, and accessibility? What gaps still exist and how can we close them? And this is for all of you guys, so have at it.
It's a great question. So there are still gaps on accuracy, right? So it's very hard to capture everything that is being said, context, accents, noise on the background. I mean, it depends on the quality of the audio, the quality of the output, right? So that's one thing, and that's to my point earlier in the conversation. That's why we use AI, but also we use humans to make sure that we get it right? So that's one gap that still needs to be closed. And I think that the next generation, to your point about what's next, is what you can generate with the content that is being captured. So say in other words, if you attend a meeting that is an hour long and capturing what's being said and then summarizing what is being said and in a format that people can consume that information more quickly. So it's an hour meeting or a 2-hour meeting in 3 bullet points, and this is where you were mentioned, and this is what is being said, and these are your action items, and this is the main topic, and understanding the sentiment behind what is being said. Like all of that is coming. I think that's the next generation of AI and what's to come, right? So putting more context and sentiment analysis and summarizing content after like capturing hours and hours of conversations.
Are you trying to say that we all might need to be in less meetings in the future? Because that would be amazing.
How many hours we spend in meetings every day? So maybe you don't have to attend the meeting, and you just get a summary, and this is what is being said, this is what you have to do, and this is who you have to connect with, and that's it.
That would save me so much time. Zohar, what do you think?
I would have to agree. I think it's accuracy, and I think it's going to greatly improve. We use video internally at Vimeo using our tools. We record all the meetings, all training sessions. You essentially have a video knowledge base of the entire company that can live on forever. Today, or up until recently, my name was transcribed so hard in all of the places that I was mentioned. So that's how I would search for, where I was mentioned in meetings and calls. But I think just, context is super important. And not only being able to teach, obviously, transcription services or give them a dictionary, but also to learn automatically from content and from what is being displayed on screens as presenters present content in recorded presentations and so forth. And to your last point, yes, you're going to have to attend much less meetings in the future. We already do that today. Every video gets AI summarization, AI highlights, automatic chaptering, automatic titling and description of the video. And the thing that I'm most excited about is the ability to interact with a video. So imagine watching a video and being able to ask the video questions and getting accurate responses back about what's inside the video.
Rachel, last but not least.
I'm still wondering how we're going to ask videos questions, but I'll have to think about that more later. But I was thinking about automatic captioning, and I've mentioned already that it's not perfect, but I use captions a lot. I use AI captions a lot. I use auto captions for video calls on Google Meet, on Zoom, with hearing people that don't know sign language. And it's not a one size fits all for all deaf individuals, but it's something I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable using my voice. I'm comfortable interacting with hearing people through auto captions. So I do feel like the accuracy will hopefully just continue to improve when it comes to accents and punctuation and just the impacts on my ability to communicate smoothly through captions. But I'm also wondering if we can continue to improve. So right now, auto captions aren't great at recognizing my deaf voice. And I notice that most hearing people, when I speak, a lot of hearing people can understand what it is I'm saying when I'm talking with them, and they seem to understand me fairly well. But wow, when I look at the auto captions, it distorts what I'm saying so drastically. It's not what I've said at all. It's incredibly messy. So I just ignore the captions when I'm speaking, but I would love to see that improved. And I've also noticed certain impacts when I have Zoom meetings or video calls, when the other person is maybe late deafened or hard of hearing, and they don't use sign language, but they also have a deaf voice. If we can't use a shared language of sign language, and I'm talking and they are relying on my captions, it's not accurate for the other person who also has a hearing loss. So it's hard to connect, even though we both have some sort of hearing loss, we don't both share the same sign language. So I wish captions could capture my deaf accent better. And I think deaf people would appreciate that as well. And that's just one more thing I wanted to add.
Maybe it seems like we need to have a database of different deaf accents that we can train the AI on. That's a great suggestion. So I'm going to open it up to all of you guys. I've had the privilege of asking you guys some great questions, but I think you guys might want to ask some questions too. We have a microphone right up there. Don't be shy. We love questions.
So more or less like just points. So my name is Zupe. I am a marketer formerly at places such as Airbnb, and also have worked in communications as well. And I just want to highlight how important it is overall, because there are people who are neurodivergent who rely heavily on captions, right? Accessibility for me is at the core of my practice as a marketer. And so I'm always thinking about how am I going to be able to touch whoever it is that I'm getting this message across to. And, especially, I use captions, all the time. And so I wanted to make that point. The second is specifically for Zohar and for Fernando. So I can understand as well because my name is Dupe. So most of the time, technology does not understand me, even though I'm speaking quite clearly. But having someone or having people on your teams who are helping you to build out this technology, I must underscore it. I have to say it 1,000,000 times over. It is supremely important that when you are building something, that the team looks as diverse as the audience that you are pushing out to, because they know it best. They know it better than any machine could ever know it. And so I cannot stress that, again, enough as a marketer. The accessibility, in order to do it right, having just a supreme team of people who know how to do that is important. And the third point that I wanted to make was that, tone. For me, I think that that's another area in which I'd like to see the technology, move. I know we all here can remember when there was only one voice and it was a flat voice, when it comes to things such as Google technology or Siri, right? And what a difference it makes to be able to hear a voice that sounds like your voice in your language in the way that you would speak when listening. So I think that being able to provide that in a captioning setting, however that technology gets done, it only brings people closer and it makes them feel as if, again, it's a nod to this product is for me, this thing is for me, this message is for me. So I just wanted to make those points. It sounds like you all have it together, but just as a marketer who really pays attention to accessibility, one, I'm grateful for this conversation, but as well, when we're thinking about the next level of technology and accessibility, I think that these are where there are gaps and where things could be greatly improved. So.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay, this is a little high here.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Accessibility.
Can somebody just pop it off the stand? Yeah, and hand it to him. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I think that we had the same issue at another session, so I think that's a note for accessibility and inclusion right there. Anyway, my name is Diego Mariscal. I work on leading an accelerator that focuses on supporting founders with disabilities. And my question was particularly around innovation of those products. When we look back, the typewriter, text message, the internet, all of those are innovations that have started by founders with disabilities. And yet there is a dismal amount of support when it comes to venture capitalists, when it comes to the entrepreneurship ecosystem for founders with disabilities. And the way I see it is it's critical to support those entrepreneurs because that brings the level of innovation and creativity that we need in order to produce more inclusive environments. So I'm wondering how you're thinking about that. Do you think I'm on the right track? What's the landscape that you see in terms of supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities directly and to everybody?
In general terms, I can say I've been active in the venture capital scene before I joined Rev, and I wouldn't be able to say that the funds I work with had any particular biases towards founders with disabilities or without disabilities. What I can say is that, numbers speak on their own, right? So right. There's it depends on the stage of the company that you're trying to fund and who you know and what the track record is. Right. So what I can give you my card and I can put you in touch with people I know if you have any idea, and happy to chat about it.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person. And also, that was a really good question. Like, I don't know. I love those kinds of questions.
Hi, hello, my name is Jessica, and thank you first and foremost for the very informative session. I have a two-part question. So based on the research that you have done, both you, Zohar, and Fernando, what are the latest trends or how captions affect the length of the video? Is there any, and so forth, when you have multiple languages, how does that work? Does you recommend like having completely separate videos, even though it's the same video in all like your profile, channel, YouTube, you name it? And then, is there a specific font size, color that you would recommend?
I don't know about length. I know that you would want to make any content accessible no matter what length it is. I don't know if there's differences between the different languages, but what we try to do is make it possible to add to the same video captions in different languages or different sets of captions for one single video. And in terms of specific size or color, I don't have any data on that, other than the fact that you would choose high contrast, like our default options are high contrast colors to address visually impaired folks.
I think maybe Rachel and I actually might have a little insight on like, I know for like, just person is like, you don't want too many words coming up at once, but you don't want like 2 words at a time. It's just like, yeah, do you want to add to that?
Sure, so just some high-level observations. High contrast is important. Sometimes we see some errors where captions are overlapping a background that is also white. So the captions also being white then blend into the background. Or at times I've noticed they'll come up too quickly and I can't read fast enough, even though I'm a pretty fast reader myself. And watching live TV captions are incredibly behind. There's a long lag, so it takes a minute, 5 to 10 seconds to catch up. So I either can't read fast enough or it's too slow and it's behind quite a few seconds. We also have folks with visual disabilities. So having the option to change colors, to change format and sizing is another accessibility issue.
Did you want to also respond at all, Fernando? Or?
I think everything being said. I mean, the only thing I would say is from a language perspective, I think it's in control of the platform, right? So you don't want to have multiple languages at the same time, but you want to give the user the option to choose the language they need the captions on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Corinne. I work at digital for a CPG company. So I balance between being digital and in store at like Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens. So Rachel, this is more towards you of what is your experience, let's take it out of digital for a second, in store, and what technologies have you potentially seen if you're saying that ALS is your main language and maybe English is the second, of how retail potentially works for a company like through CPG. So can you explain your experience a little bit like in store?
Sure, that's a great question. Honestly, I don't see many accommodations when I'm out in retail stores. If I'm trying to talk with somebody who's working in a store and they're a hearing person, sometimes I will speak directly to them. If I'm not in the mood, I'll bring my iPhone and I'll just text. I have an app that I can type what it is that I want to communicate, and I just show the hearing person my phone screen and express what I need, then they type back to me and we interact that way. So we always figure out a way to communicate, but I've thought in the past about if I was in a public place and there were public announcements, it would be really nice to have access to what's being announced over a PA system per se, and I don't see that at all in most places. Airports, transportation, stores, I haven't seen that kind of accessibility for that type of information. And I also think of staff. There are different trainings. I think providing training to staff on how to interact with a variety of folks, learning basic gestures that are really useful for hearing people to know. I can pick up if a hearing person understands gestures pretty accurately, but I can also tell when people aren't very comfortable and don't have training in how to interact with deaf individuals. So if you think about training your staff in how to interact with people who communicate with different modalities, I think that's huge. I love when I meet somebody who is incredibly flexible and they're willing to write things down or to gesture with me, because I always have a pretty great interaction when that happens.
Do you use QR codes then when you're in store at all?
For what exactly?
Like if you're trying to understand a product and it has like a QR code next to, like, let's say the price or something like that, is that helpful at all?
Sure, yeah, sometimes. If I'm super curious about that product, yeah, I would use that.
Hello, my name is Brandon. I work for a Fortune 100 company doing internal employee training. So with being in a large company, we have an internal video platform that is horrendous when it comes to accessibility. And in this space, we're unable to get any market data because our employees are self-reported, potentially having a disability with HR, but HR does not report that data back out. How do you convince your company to prioritize accessibility and the captions and improvements and stuff like that?
I think specifically for Vimeo, as opposed to a lot of other enterprise first platforms, we were first a consumer platform. So, we had to create the right accessibility tools for the masses to be able to really, to make the platform accessible to everybody. And as we've developed our product and expanded our offering, we've kind of expanded into that enterprise space. So today we offer internal video communication platforms for, Fortune 1000 companies to communicate internally, and we already have all those accessibility features built into the product, so they get it out of the box. So, you should tell the folks at your company to transfer it to Vimeo, and you'll get it out of the box. And we use Rev, so it's a really accurate transcriptions.
This isn't a sales pitch. No other comments from anyone else?
I mean, I would say it depends on what moves them, but you have the argument of compliance on the one side, right? So you got to be compliant, and then on the other side is just volume and business. So I mean, the hearing aid market is worth $12 billion, and it's growing at a 7% CAGR. So if those two arguments are not enough, I mean, hard to add anything else.
Yeah, if you want to be competitive, you really do just need to be open to hiring anybody and accommodating anybody. I was going to say one last quick suggestion. At the Washington Post, I started an employee resource group for people with disabilities, and I think that's another way to kind of get together as a collective and find people in your company who can say, oh, these are the things that I'm having trouble with, or here are some ideas for the products, because you're right, like it's not tracked by HR, and there's not really an easy way to be like, who are the disabled people in the room, right? Like, you wouldn't know looking at me and Rachel that we are deaf and hard of hearing. So, yeah, anyway.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adnan, and I work for an advertising agency. Earlier, Amanda, you mentioned that like there are times in videos where the closed captioning will just say something like somber music or suspenseful music, and those do kind of suck. And there has been fantastic accessibility artists like Christine Sun Kim that have addressed something like that. And you could totally see a world where people start leveraging AI tools to kind of fill in the gaps, because a lot of this comes down to either a user being like, okay, I know the kind of mood that I'm trying to go for and I want to put that in my transcription for the captions, but then I wanted to ask, what are companies like Vimeo, where like, the staff picks are beautiful things and they've got all the great music and all that, but how are you guys making that process easier for creators in terms of conveying that mood where they might not be able to do it?
I think it's a fascinating question. Our goal is to be able to provide the tools to achieve that. I think it's up to the creators and to the community to come up with what is the right kind of language to convey that message as something, just like the example that you gave. I don't know, maybe you have something to add about that, but our goal is to provide the platform, provide the tools for the creators and for the community to be able to convey those emotions that they're trying to convey.
Fernando or Rachel, and then I'm sorry everybody else in line, we're going to be at time after this, but Captions in the hallway. Did you want to say anything to wrap up?
Sure, yeah, I'll just briefly add, I love that you mentioned Christine Soon Kim. I recommend everyone in this room to run and check out her work. I think she's just incredibly playful with how she takes liberty in her captions and owns her captions, and she has several video projects online where she's come up with her own captions. She's a deaf creator, and she describes sounds in a way that's very playful or funny or just expressing something to an audience that means something potentially different. So captions can serve different purposes, and they can be a creative tool as well. You can make them comedic or playful to a point where maybe the point isn't to capture like an accurate theme or what the sound is intended to be for the hearing folks, but also the mood, or to capture what the deaf perspective could be, or whatever it is. When I think about captions, I also think about they often have a hearing bias in how they've been created and in terms of the creative process. So Christine Soon Kim has kind of taken captions herself and put that deaf perspective, the deaf lens into captions and how they're expressed. And that's another thing that we can do. I think that forces us to think about how many different things captions can accomplish. It can be just descriptive, or it can be playful at the same time.
I'm going to totally follow that account after this. Fernando, any last thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, no, I think everything's it.
Okay, sorry to kick you out, guys. We're at time. Catch us in the hallway. Happy to have more conversation.